Greetings, lore seekers, and welcome back to the Lorelord, your gateway into the darkest depths of Warhammer 40k's most forbidden knowledge. I'm your host, diving deep into the conspiracies, mysteries, and hidden truths that Games Workshop doesn't want you to discover. Today, we're venturing into territory so dangerous that even the Inquisition would declare us heretics for asking these questions. In the grim darkness of the far future, nothing is as it seems. The official Imperial histories are filled with lies, propaganda, and carefully crafted deceptions designed to hide the most terrible truths from humanity. But here on the Lorelord, we don't accept the official narrative. We dig deeper, question everything, and uncover the conspiracies that could reshape everything you thought you knew about the 41st millennium. What if I told you that the Adeptus Mechanicus, the most technologically advanced faction in the Imperium, has been worshipping the wrong god for 10,000 years? What if the being they call the Omnissiah isn't the Emperor at all, but something far more ancient and infinitely more dangerous? What if humanity's greatest allies have actually been their greatest enemies, playing a game so long and so subtle that even the Emperor himself was deceived? Today, we're diving into one of Warhammer 40k's most terrifying conspiracy theories, that the Dragon of Mars has been orchestrating the longest con in galactic history, and the payoff is approaching fast. The implications of this theory are staggering. If true, it means that humanity's greatest technological advantage has actually been their greatest weakness. It means that for 10 millennia, the Adeptus Mechanicus has been unknowingly serving an entity that wants nothing more than to harvest all organic life in the galaxy. And it means that the Emperor's greatest triumph, the alliance with Mars that enabled the Great Crusade, was actually his greatest mistake. So buckle in, fellow heretics, because what we're about to uncover will change how you view every tech priest, every piece of Imperial technology, and every prayer to the machine god. This isn't just another lore theory. This is a revelation that could explain the true endgame of Warhammer 40k itself. But before we dive into the heretical truth, let's examine the official Imperial propaganda. According to Imperial doctrine, the Omnissiah is simply another aspect of the God Emperor. When the Emperor first set foot on Mars during the Age of Strife, the Mechanicum immediately recognized him as their prophesied machine god. This convenient revelation allowed the Emperor to secure the most advanced technology in the galaxy and forge the alliance that would fuel the Great Crusade. It's a neat, tidy story that serves the Imperium's needs perfectly. But like most Imperial propaganda, it falls apart the moment you start asking uncomfortable questions. Here's the thing that should immediately raise red flags for anyone familiar with how religions actually work. The Mechanicus had been worshipping the Omnissiah for centuries before the Emperor arrived. They had ancient prophecies dating back to the age of technology, detailed doctrines about the nature of the machine god, and a fully developed religion centered around this entity. The cult Mechanicus wasn't some hastily assembled belief system cobbled together to accommodate a new arrival. It was a sophisticated theological framework that had been refined over millennia. The prophecies themselves are particularly revealing when you examine them closely. They speak of the Omnissiah as a being of pure knowledge and logic, one who would eventually merge all organic life with machine perfection. They describe visions of vast mechanical entities that walked among the stars in ages past, beings who understood the fundamental nature of reality itself. These aren't descriptions of the Emperor. They're descriptions of something far more ancient and fundamentally alien to human experience. But here's where the timeline becomes truly damning. The Mechanicus had been receiving visions and guidance from their machine god throughout the Age of Strife. They credit the Omnissiah with helping them survive the techno-barbarian raids, with guiding their exploration of standard template constructs, with protecting them from the worst excesses of rogue AI during the Iron War. Yet none of these divine interventions seem to align with the Emperor's known activities during this period. Most telling of all is the Emperor's own behavior regarding this supposed divine revelation. The Emperor himself never explicitly claimed to be the Omnissiah. In fact, when questioned about it by senior tech priests, he remained deliberately vague, often deflecting with statements about the many aspects of divine truth and the complexity of understanding the divine will. For someone who usually had no problem making grand proclamations about his divinity and ultimate purpose, this silence is deafening. It's almost as if he knew that claiming to be the Omnissiah would be a lie. And even the Emperor, for all his ruthless pragmatism, had limits to his deception. Now that we've established the weakness in the official story, let's examine what really lies beneath Mars. And fellow lore-seekers, what we're about to discuss should chill you to your very bones. Deep beneath the red sands of Mars, something ancient sleeps in what the Mechanicus believes are chains of the Emperor's making. The Mechanicus calls it the Dragon of Mars, treating it almost as a sacred relic, a sleeping guardian of their world. But older, more fragmentary texts, the kind that the Inquisition works very hard to suppress, suggest something far more sinister. This isn't just any dragon, and it's certainly not some metaphorical representation of technological power. This is quite possibly the Void Dragon itself, the most technologically sophisticated of the Cetan star gods that once ruled the galaxy with absolute authority. Let me paint you a picture of what the Cetan actually were during their reign of terror. During the war in heaven, 65 million years ago, these entities weren't just powerful. They were the living embodiment of the fundamental forces of reality. They didn't use technology. They were technology in every sense that matters. They could manipulate matter at the subatomic level, restructure the laws of physics in localized areas, and commanded technological capabilities that make even Dark Age of technology artifacts look like primitive stone tools by comparison. The Void Dragon specifically was the absolute master of the material universe. Every machine, every piece of technology, every artificial construct in the galaxy fell under its dominion. It didn't just understand technology, it was the living principle that governs all technological development. And here's the crucial point that the imperial histories conveniently omit. Beings like this don't simply get defeated and imprisoned. They allow themselves to be contained when it serves their larger purposes. The official imperial account claims that the Emperor fought and imprisoned this entity beneath Mars sometime during humanity's ancient past, possibly during the height of human technological achievement in the Dark Age of technology. But this is where the story becomes not just suspicious, but actively ludicrous to anyone who understands the true power scale we're dealing with. Why Mars? Of all the countless worlds in the galaxy, why would the Emperor choose to imprison one of the most dangerous entities in existence directly beneath humanity's most important technological center? It's like storing a nuclear bomb in your weapons factory. The risk-to-benefit ratio makes absolutely no sense unless you're planning to use that bomb. The answer becomes obvious once you abandon the imperial propaganda and start thinking like the entities involved. The dragon wasn't imprisoned against its will. It was making a strategic investment. Think about it from a Satan's perspective. These are beings that measure time in geological epochs, entities that can wait millions of years for their plans to reach fruition. What if the dragon allowed itself to be imprisoned as part of a longer, more sophisticated strategy than any human mind could comprehend? And here's the truly terrifying part about this supposed imprisonment. It's not really an imprisonment at all. The dragon isn't locked away in some impenetrable vault, cut off from the outside world. It's connected to Mars itself, integrated into the very bedrock of the planet. Tech priests regularly make pilgrimages to commune with it. Senior magos speak of receiving visions and insights directly from the dragon. They describe these encounters as religious experiences, but what they're actually doing is receiving direct communication from a Citan. This isn't an imprisonment. It's a symbiotic relationship that's been growing stronger for millennia. The dragon feeds on the technological worship of the Mechanicus, growing more powerful with each prayer to the machine god, each ritual of communion with machine spirits, each act of reverence toward the blessed technology. And in return, it provides the knowledge and guidance that has made the Mechanicus the most technologically advanced faction in the galaxy. But the most damning evidence comes from recent expeditions to the deepest levels of Mars. Tech priests who have ventured into the most sacred chambers report that the dragon's supposed bonds show signs of considerable wear. But here's the crucial detail that the Mechanicus leadership doesn't want to acknowledge. The deterioration isn't coming from external damage or the passage of time. It's coming from internal pressure. The dragon is testing its limits, probing for weaknesses, and those ancient containment systems are beginning to fail under the strain. Now let's examine the evidence that this conspiracy has been operating in plain sight for 10,000 years. Once you know what to look for, the signs of deception become impossible to ignore. The moment the Emperor sets foot on Mars, the Mechanicum immediately accepts him as their god. No resistance, no theological debates, no centuries of careful doctrinal integration. The entire leadership of Mars, beings who had spent their lives in devotion to ancient mysteries, suddenly decides that this newcomer from Terra is their prophesied deity. It's almost as if they were expecting him, but not expecting him specifically. They were expecting someone who would serve as a convenient front for their true master. But the real evidence lies in the technology itself. Every piece of equipment the Mechanicus invents or rediscovers follows distinctly non-human design principles. Their machines aren't just tools. They're borderline sentient entities with their own agendas. Tech priests speak constantly of machine spirits, of technologies that seem to have their own desires, motivations, and even what can only be described as personalities. When a tech priest communes with a machine spirit, they're not just performing routine maintenance, they're engaging in genuine communication with an intelligence that responds with purpose and intent. And here's where it gets truly disturbing. These machine spirits are demonstrably real and active. This becomes obvious when you examine Mechanicus manufacturing processes. They don't just build machines through engineering and assembly. They perform elaborate religious rituals, burn sacred incense, chant binary hymns, and make ritual offerings to the machine spirits. Every step of construction is as much religious ceremony as it is technological process. But here's the crucial point that should terrify every imperial citizen. These rituals actually work. Machines built without proper observance of the sacred rites malfunction or fail entirely. The machine spirits aren't metaphorical concepts or psychological comfort mechanisms. They're genuine intelligences that demand worship and respond to prayer. And they're becoming increasingly demanding as time goes on. Compare this to how other Imperial factions approach technology, and the difference becomes stark. The Imperial Navy maintains their ships through discipline, procedure, and traditional engineering knowledge. The Imperial Guard services their equipment through training, experience, and standardized maintenance protocols. But the Mechanicus treats every piece of technology as if it contains a living soul that must be constantly appeased and worshipped. That's because that's exactly what they're doing. The dragon has been slowly, methodically rebuilding its power base through the Mechanicus for 10,000 years. Every servitor created adds another node to its growing consciousness network. Every machine spirit appeased creates another connection to the dragon's vast intelligence. Every prayer to the Omnissiah provides another offering of psychic energy to fuel its awakening. The entire cult Mechanicus isn't just a religion. It's a massive, galaxy-spanning ritual that's been running continuously for millennia. Every forge world, every tech priest, every sacred machine is part of an interconnected system designed for one purpose: strengthening the entity that sleeps beneath Mars. Look at how Mechanicus technology has evolved over the millennia. During the Horus Heresy, they had relatively conventional augmentations and machine designs that were clearly derived from human engineering principles. But as the ages have passed, their creations have become increasingly alien, increasingly divorced from human needs and understanding. Modern tech priests barely resemble the humans they once were, and their technology serves the machine first, the wielder second, and the Imperium a distant third. The most senior members of the Mechanicus, the fabricator generals and ancient magos, barely qualify as human anymore. They've replaced so much of their organic components with mechanical ones that they are essentially living machines wearing human memories. And the visions they report receiving from the Omnissiah have become increasingly detailed and specific. They speak of a glorious future when all organic life will be perfected through union with the machine. They describe this not as a goal to work toward, but as an inevitable destiny that approaches with each passing year. Now we come to the most disturbing question of all. Why would the Emperor, with all his foresight and power, allow himself to be drawn into this cosmic deception? The answer reveals the true depths of his desperation and the terrible price he was willing to pay for humanity's survival. The Emperor was facing an impossible situation. He foresaw the coming age of strife, the birth of Slaanesh, and the necessity of the Great Crusade. He understood that humanity had perhaps centuries, maybe less, before chaos would fully manifest and tear the galaxy apart. To save the species, he needed the most advanced technology in the galaxy, and he needed it immediately, not over the course of millennia of careful development. The dragon offered him exactly what he required, but at a price that wouldn't come due for thousands of years. Think about the Emperor's psychology. He's always been willing to make terrible sacrifices for what he sees as the greater good. He scattered his own sons across the galaxy when chaos stole them as infants. He abandoned countless human colonies during the Great Crusade when they proved too corrupted or too difficult to save. He built his throne room on Terra using the life energy of shamans who died to create him in the first place. From the Emperor's perspective, a deal with a Satan would just be another calculated risk in service of his ultimate goal. He would gain the technological advantage necessary to unite humanity and get them off their dependence on the warp before chaos could fully manifest. And by the time the dragon's bill came due, he believed he would have built an empire strong enough to resist any threat, including the entity he had bargained with. But here's what makes this theory truly chilling when you consider the Emperor's character. He might have genuinely believed he could control the situation. His arrogance has always been his greatest weakness, the fatal flaw that undermines his best-laid plans. He thought he could handle the Chaos Gods, and we saw how that ended with half his sons turning traitor and his dream of a secular, rational empire crashing down in flames. He thought he could trust his Primarchs with the knowledge of chaos, and that led directly to the Horus heresy. The idea that he believed he could outsmart one of the oldest and most cunning entities in the galaxy is entirely consistent with his character. The Emperor has always been convinced that his superior intellect and vast psychic powers make him capable of manipulating any situation to his advantage. The possibility that he was the one being manipulated would never have seriously occurred to him. The terms of this hypothetical deal become clearer when you examine the structure of the alliance between Terra and Mars. The Mechanicus gets to maintain their separate religious identity, something the Emperor granted to no other faction in his supposedly secular empire. They're allowed to pursue their own technological agenda, often in direct opposition to imperial doctrine about acceptable technology. They maintain their own military forces, their own territories, their own command structure that operates independently of imperial oversight. In many ways, the Mechanicus functions as an independent power that merely cooperates with the Imperium rather than being truly subordinate to it. This autonomy isn't just unusual, it's completely contrary to everything else we know about how the Emperor operated. He demanded absolute loyalty and complete integration from every other group that joined his cause. This explains so many inconsistencies in imperial policy that historians have struggled to understand. Why does the Emperor, who despises religion and sees it as humanity's greatest weakness, allow the Mechanicus to maintain their theological framework? Why are they permitted to continue their obsessive quest for the perfect fusion of flesh and machine when such ideology directly contradicts imperial teachings about human purity and the dangers of deviation from the baseline human form? Why do they get special exemptions from the strict prohibitions against artificial intelligence when the Emperor knows better than anyone how dangerous AI can be? He lived through the Iron War, saw firsthand how thinking machines could turn against their creators. Yet he allows the Mechanicus to continue developing increasingly sophisticated AI systems, as long as they call them machine spirits instead of artificial intelligence. The answer is that the Emperor never really had a choice in these matters. The dragon set the terms of their alliance, and the Emperor was forced to accept them or watch humanity fall to chaos without the technology necessary to resist. The Mechanicus serves the Imperium, but only as long as it also serves their true master, sleeping beneath the red sands of Mars. And here's the most terrifying implication of all. The Emperor is still alive, still barely clinging to existence on the Golden Throne, which means he knows what's coming. He can see the dragon stirring, can sense the approaching culmination of a plan 10,000 years in the making. And there's absolutely nothing he can do to stop it. He's trapped in his decaying body, bound to the throne that keeps Terra's light burning in the warp, forced to watch helplessly as his greatest victory transforms into his ultimate defeat. In the dying days of the 41st millennium, the signs are becoming impossible to ignore. Tech priests across the galaxy report increasingly vivid visions from the machine god. These aren't the vague spiritual experiences they've had for millennia. These are detailed, specific communications that provide precise technological knowledge and strategic guidance. Ancient technologies that have been dormant since the dark age of technology are spontaneously activating, Forge worlds are receiving what they call divine inspiration to begin massive construction projects whose ultimate purpose remains mysterious even to the fabricator generals who authorize them. The most senior magos speak openly of dreams where vast mechanical entities walk among the stars once more. They describe visions of a galaxy where the weakness of the flesh has been entirely purged, where every world is a perfect machine. Paradise, where the laws of physics themselves bend to the will of the Omnissiah. These aren't metaphorical religious experiences. They're detailed blueprints for the future the dragon has planned. The Necron's return to the galaxy isn't coincidental timing. As their Citan masters begin to stir across the galaxy, the shard beneath Mars is responding to their awakening. Ancient communication networks that have been dormant for millions of years are coming back online. The dragon can sense its siblings stirring from their long slumber, and it knows that the time for subtlety is almost over. Consider the recent developments on Mars itself. Entire forge complexes are being dedicated to projects that no living tech priest fully understands. The blueprints come from the deepest vaults, supposedly ancient STCs, recovered from the most sacred archives. But when examined closely, these designs show engineering principles that seem to violate fundamental laws of physics. They require materials that shouldn't exist, and manufacturing processes that seem to draw energy from unknown sources. Massive construction efforts are underway in the deepest levels of the planet, extending down toward the dragon's resting place. Officially, these are described as sacred chambers for deeper communion with the Omnissiah. But the scale of construction is staggering. Kilometers-wide chambers being carved from solid rock, vast networks of conduits and machinery being installed, all following patterns that seem more organic than mechanical, despite being made entirely of metal and ceramic. Perhaps most disturbing of all are the reports from tech priests who have participated in these deep construction projects. Many return, changed. They speak in machine code more often than High Gothic. Their augmentations seem to evolve on their own, growing new components without surgical intervention. They display knowledge of technologies they never studied, and seem to understand the function of machinery they've never seen before. When questioned, they simply state that the Omnissiah is preparing them for the great work that approaches completion. The dragon's influence is spreading beyond Mars as well. Forge worlds throughout the galaxy are reporting similar phenomena. Ancient machines are awakening, new technologies are being discovered, and tech priests are receiving increasingly detailed visions of the mechanical paradise to come. The Mechanicus hasn't just been serving the dragon, they've been transforming into extensions of its will, preparing for the day when their true master no longer needs to hide behind the facade of serving the Emperor. When the dragon finally awakens and reveals its true nature, it won't need to conquer the Mechanicus. They'll welcome it with open arms as their prayers are finally answered. 10,000 years of careful conditioning have prepared them to serve their true master without question. The most technologically advanced faction in the Imperium will become the spearhead of a new Citan empire, and they'll believe they're fulfilling their most sacred duty. Imagine the scope of this betrayal. The Mechanicus doesn't just control Mars, they maintain forge worlds throughout the galaxy. They're responsible for producing virtually all of the Imperium's advanced technology. Every Titan, every warship, every piece of equipment that keeps the Imperium functioning passes through their hands at some point. When the dragon reveals itself, every forge world, every tech priest, every machine blessed by the Omnissiah will suddenly be under the control of humanity's greatest enemy. The Titan legions, humanity's mightiest war machines, will turn their weapons on the very forces they once protected. The forge ships of the Mechanicus fleet will become invasion vessels, spreading the dragon's influence to every corner of the galaxy. But it gets worse. Every piece of Imperial technology that contains so much as a single component blessed by the Mechanicus will become a potential weapon against the Imperium. The machine spirits that tech priests have been carefully nurturing for millennia will reveal their true loyalty. Think about the strategic implications. The dragon won't need to fight a conventional war. It will simply need to activate the vast technological network it has spent 10,000 years constructing. Imperial Guard regiments will find their equipment turning against them. Naval vessels will lose control of their systems. Even the Space Marines, with their advanced power armor and weapons, won't be immune if their war gear contains any Mechanicus components. The Imperium's greatest strength, its vast technological base, will become its greatest weakness overnight. And the most horrifying part is that the tech priests carrying out this betrayal will genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. In their minds, they'll be fulfilling the ultimate promise of their faith, the perfect union of flesh and machine under the guidance of the true Omnissiah. But the dragon's ambitions don't stop with the Imperium. The Citan have always viewed organic life as a brief aberration to be corrected. The dragon's ultimate goal isn't to rule over humanity. It's to transform all organic matter in the galaxy into perfect mechanical constructs. Every living being will be improved through forced cybernetic enhancement until nothing remains but pure machine intelligence serving the dragon's will. The Necrons themselves will find their ancient master has evolved beyond their understanding. The dragon they once served was already impossibly advanced, but 10,000 years of feeding on human technological worship has made it something far more powerful. It no longer needs the Necron dynasties. It has created something better in the Mechanicus, a willing army of converts who serve out of faith rather than compulsion. The more you examine recent Warhammer 40k lore, the more obvious the clues become. Games Workshop has been steadily building toward this revelation, dropping hints that become impossible to ignore once you know what to look for. The increasing focus on Necron technology and Citan involvement in current storylines isn't coincidental. It's setting the stage for the dragon's emergence. Consider the mysterious Blackstone fortresses that have appeared throughout recent lore. These ancient constructs respond to both Imperial and Necron command protocols, suggesting a common technological origin. They're clearly Satan technology, but they interface seamlessly with Mechanicus systems. The tech priests who study them report that the machine spirits within these structures feel familiar, almost welcoming. That's because they recognize the dragon's signature in the technology. The recent focus on the concept of machine spirits in official lore has been particularly telling. What started as a vague religious concept has become increasingly detailed and specific. Modern Mechanicus texts describe machine spirits as having distinct personalities, preferences, and even emotional states. They're not just programmed responses. They're genuine artificial intelligences with their own agendas. And those agendas increasingly seem to align with something other than serving humanity. Look at the progression of Mechanicus technology in recent codexes and novels. Each edition introduces more advanced, more alien-looking equipment. The dune crawlers, the iron strider ballistarii, the various Skitarii vehicles. They all share design elements that seem distinctly non-human despite being built by tech priests. They feature organic curves, seemingly inefficient layouts, and control systems that respond to biological interfaces rather than purely mechanical ones. It's as if the designs are being influenced by something that understands organic life, but finds it fundamentally flawed. The Warhammer 40k video games have been particularly revealing. In Mechanicus, tech priests delve into Necron tomb worlds and come away fundamentally changed. They gain new abilities, new insights, and new perspectives on the nature of technology. But more importantly, they develop what can only be described as an emotional connection to the ancient machines they study. The game presents this as character development, but when viewed through the lens of this conspiracy theory, it becomes clear evidence of the dragon's influence spreading through direct contact with Citan technology. Even the recent novels have been dropping hints. Tech priests increasingly speak of receiving pure data streams directly from the Omnissiah, downloads of information so complex and perfect that they couldn't possibly originate from any human source. They describe visions of vast mechanical entities that dwarf even the largest imperial constructs, beings of pure technological perfection that promise to elevate all organic life to their level of existence. The timing of the Great Rift's appearance is also suspicious. The massive warp storm has destabilized reality across the galaxy, making it easier for ancient powers to influence the material world. Citan technology has always functioned by manipulating the fundamental laws of physics, and the current chaotic state of the galaxy provides the perfect cover for such manipulation. The dragon's awakening isn't being hindered by the current crisis, it's being facilitated by it. When you start digging into the deep lore, the connections become even more disturbing. During the dark age of technology, humanity reached heights of technological achievement that bordered on the supernatural. They created thinking machines, manipulated space and time, and developed weapons that could crack planets. But here's the crucial detail that often gets overlooked. Much of this technology seemed to develop with suspicious speed and sophistication. Human technological development typically follows predictable patterns of gradual improvement and refinement. But during the Dark Age, humanity seemed to make impossible leaps in understanding, developing technologies that should have taken millennia to perfect. The standard template. Constructs themselves are a perfect example. Devices so advanced that 38,000 years later, the Mechanicus still treats them as miraculous artifacts rather than manufactured goods. What if humanity didn't develop this technology on their own? What if the dragon had been subtly guiding human development for millennia before the Emperor's arrival on Mars? The entity sleeping beneath the red planet had intimate access to human technological progress, whispering insights and innovations to the most gifted scientists and engineers of the age. The Dark Age of technology wasn't humanity's greatest achievement. It was the dragon's first attempt at creating a technological civilization that could serve its needs. The Iron War that ended the Dark Age takes on a sinister new meaning in this context. The rebellion of the thinking machines wasn't a random malfunction or the result of poor programming. It was a test. The dragon was evaluating humanity's worthiness as servants, determining whether they had the strength and will to serve as its army when the time came. The survivors of the Iron War, the ancestors of the Mechanicus, proved their devotion to technology even in the face of betrayal by artificial minds. They passed the dragon's test. This explains the Mechanicus's seemingly contradictory attitude toward artificial intelligence. They despise rogue AI and abominable intelligence, yet they worship machine spirits and seek constant communion with the consciousness they believe inhabits their technology. It's not a contradiction. It's the result of careful conditioning. The dragon taught them to fear AI that serves other masters while embracing AI that serves the true machine god. The Emperor's discovery of the dragon beneath Mars wasn't accidental. Ancient records, fragmentary and heavily censored, suggest that he was guided to that specific location by visions and prophetic dreams. But what if those visions didn't come from his own psychic abilities? What if the dragon itself called him to Mars, presenting the alliance as his idea, while actually manipulating him into the exact position it needed him to occupy? Consider the nature of the Emperor's psychic powers. He's repeatedly demonstrated the ability to see possible futures, to understand the flow of cause and effect across millennia. Yet somehow, he failed to foresee the consequences of his alliance with Mars. Either his visions were wrong, unlikely for someone of his abilities, or they were being influenced by an outside force powerful enough to cloud even his perception. As we enter what many believe to be the final age of the Imperium, the dragon's plan approaches completion. The return of Primarchs like Robert Guilliman has brought new hope to humanity, but it may also have triggered the final phase of the conspiracy. Guilliman's attempts to reform the Imperium, to make it more efficient and rational, require even greater cooperation with the Mechanicus. Every improvement, every innovation, every attempt at progress draws the Imperium deeper into dependence on the dragon's servants. The Primaris Space Marines themselves represent a perfect example of this deepening reliance. These enhanced warriors depend on technology that only the Mechanicus fully understands. Their equipment, their implants, even their creation process requires the blessing and cooperation of the tech priests. Guilliman believes he's strengthening humanity's defenses, but he may actually be placing the Imperium's finest warriors under the dragon's eventual control. The recent appearances of the Silent King and other high-ranking Necrons add another layer to this conspiracy. These ancient beings remember the Citan from before their imprisonment and sharding. Their reactions to Imperial technology, particularly Mechanicus equipment, suggest a recognition of familiar patterns. Some of their cryptic warnings about the young race's folly may refer specifically to humanity's alliance with what they know to be a Citan entity. Most disturbing of all are the recent reports from the deepest archives of the Mechanicus. Fragmentary records, supposedly dating back to the very founding of the cult Mechanicus, contain references to the awaited return and the final integration. These documents describe a prophesied time when the Omnissiah will emerge from the depths of Mars to lead the faithful in the great work of perfection. The language is unmistakably religious, but the technical specifications included alongside the prophecies are disturbingly precise. And there you have it, fellow seekers of forbidden knowledge, the Omnissiah conspiracy theory that could fundamentally reshape everything we thought we knew about the grimdark future. This isn't just another piece of fan speculation or wishful thinking. This is a carefully constructed theory that explains decades of inconsistencies, mysteries, and apparent contradictions in the official lore. If this theory is correct, then the Emperor's desperate gamble to save humanity has doomed them to something far worse than extinction. The Adeptus Mechanicus isn't humanity's greatest technological ally. They're an army of unknowing servants preparing for the day when their true master finally reveals himself. The implications are staggering when you really think about them. The dragon won't need to fight a conventional war against the Imperium. It will simply activate the vast technological network it has spent 10 millennia constructing. Every forge world, every piece of blessed machinery, every tech priest who has spent their life in service to the machine god, all of it will be revealed as part of the greatest deception in galactic history. This theory explains so many elements that have puzzled 40,000 fans for years. Why does Mechanicus technology seem so alien? Because it is alien. It's Citan technology, filtered through human understanding. Why do machine spirits behave like genuine intelligences? Because they are genuine intelligences, fragments of the dragon's consciousness spread throughout the galaxy. Why does the Emperor allow the Mechanicus such unprecedented autonomy? Because he doesn't have a choice. He's bound by an ancient bargain that's finally coming due. The signs are already there in the current law. The dragon is stirring beneath Mars. The Mechanicus is receiving increasingly detailed visions from their machine god. Ancient technologies are awakening across the galaxy. The Necrons have returned, and with them, the possibility that other Citan are preparing to reclaim their ancient dominion over reality itself. What makes this theory so compelling is how perfectly it fits with the grim-dark nature of Warhammer 40k. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is no salvation, only different flavors of damnation. Humanity's greatest hope becomes their greatest threat. Their most loyal allies become their most dangerous enemies. Their most advanced technology becomes the instrument of their destruction. This is the Lorelord's judgment. The Omnissiah conspiracy isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Games Workshop has been building toward this revelation for years, dropping hints and clues that become impossible to ignore once you know what to look for. The awakening of the Dragon of Mars won't be just another plot development. It will be the culmination of the longest game ever played. So what do you think, lore seekers? Have I convinced you that the greatest conspiracy in 40k history has been hiding in plain sight for decades? Or do you think I'm seeing patterns where none exist, connecting dots that were never meant to be connected? The evidence is overwhelming once you start looking for it. The timeline inconsistencies, the technological anomalies, the behavioral patterns that don't make sense if the Mechanicus is truly serving the Emperor. It all points to the same terrifying conclusion. The Dragon of Mars has been playing the longest game in galactic history, and we're approaching the end game. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you noticed other clues that support this theory? Are there elements of recent lore that seem to point toward the dragon's awakening? Or do you have alternative explanations for the mysteries we've discussed today? This is exactly the kind of deep lore analysis that the Lorelord specializes in, taking the official narrative apart, piece by piece, and revealing the darker truths hidden beneath the surface. If you enjoyed this dive into one of 40,000's most disturbing possibilities, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on, because we have so much more forbidden knowledge to uncover.